What is up, most distinguished patrons? Don't worry, the camera's fuzzy for a reason. Today we're going to be talking about improving your vision to where you can see what the hell you're doing with welding. So let's get into it. So over the years, I have taught a lot of people how to weld, and a reoccurring theme among those people are them telling me I can't see. And I've gotten a lot of comments on this channel where people are asking for advice on how to see better during welding and explaining, like in a roundabout way, that they can't see what they're doing. So this is something that plagues pretty much anyone who welds, because guess what? If you can't see it, you probably can't weld it. I mean, you will get to a certain skill level where you can probably do a 7-18 stick rod pass without even seeing what you're doing. But let's face it, if you can't see what you're doing, the quality of your work will suffer. So I'm going to basically give you guys a ton of tips. We're going to do some experiments, and I'm going to give you some tests that you can do at home with your setup to get a determination on what might be the problem, or just determine if your vision is good as it should be to do what you do. So anyways, the first thing we're going to look at is a welding hood. Now, this is a Lincoln Viking 3350. New, they're somewhere between 180 and 300 bucks. It is a very good welding hood. This is my personal one, which has seen years and years of abuse and still works to this day and has unbelievably good vision. And what I mean by that is the color is very close to real life. So when you look at your weld pool, you can determine reds and oranges, and you can see your arc very clearly. And that's all good things to determine how hot something is, what the molten pool looks like, especially with stick where everything's kind of more clouded than with MIG and TIG. Having that clarity is beneficial. However, you don't really need to spend $200 to $300, especially in today's age, to get quality optics that will allow you to see what you need to. I personally have welded with everything from a $10 Alibaba Express hood all the way up to like $400 or $500 hoods, $1,500 powered respirators. And there's a limit to what you get for quality as the price goes up. And what I mean by that is the law of diminishing returns. Just going out and spending $500 on a welding hood is not going to make you as good as maybe I am or somebody else is with 10 years experience with a $50 hood. So if you can't weld from a lack of practice and experience, a better hood will not instantly make you a quality welder. However, it will make it easier to become good at welding simply because you can see what's going on. But like I said, the law of diminishing returns applies. I have found that there are plenty of welding hoods in the $70 to $120 range that are more than adequate to learn with and do quality welds. And that primarily stepping up to more expensive hoods like this gives you a wider viewing angle, which is nice for general fabrication, and they tend to be more sensitive when it comes to picking up arcs, so you don't randomly get flashed. That's probably the biggest difference between expensive and cheap hoods, is just how good they pick up an arc. What I found is this: I can sit under a car with my face 2 feet from what I'm welding, and it won't constantly flicker between light and dark. And that is a huge benefit when you do a lot of out of position welding, not getting flashed. It's annoying. So spending more money on a hood generally means that you're going to get a more sensitive, better functioning hood. But from an actual clarity and vision standpoint, above about 120, 130, the difference isn't that significant. And if you feel that that's what's holding you back on your welding ability, you're probably mistaken. It's not the clarity or the vision of the hood, it's probably something else. So speaking of the hood, we need to quickly cover some things. If you don't replace your front screen ever and you can't see anything through it, well, guess what? It doesn't matter if you have a $300 hood or a $50 Chinese special, you're not going to see anything. So it always pays to have replacement lenses or covers for that, and that includes the internal one as well. A lot of people either don't run it or forget about it, and guess what? You should run it, otherwise you're going to damage the cartridge and then you're not going to see shit until you buy a new one. And well, guess what? That's the most expensive part of this. And speaking of which, if you pull these plastic covers off, you do not want to wipe that cartridge down with anything but a decent cleaner, so no like brake clean for sure, and a microfiber towel that does not have metal particulates on it, because if you scratch that auto darkening filter, that will permanently affect your vision, and they can't really easily be repaired. So who cares about scratching this? Windex it and wipe it with a standard paper towel. Do not do that with the internal one. Do not use paper towels on that. You will scratch it, I promise you. So if your hood is clean, clear, and you're wearing safety glasses, which you should be anyways, make sure those things are clean and clear as well. If they're all scratched up, again, what are you going to see? Nothing but scratches, okay? So make sure that every piece of plastic between your eyeball, this is your eyeball, and what you're welding is clean and clear. So with that said, we need to do an experiment to determine how good your vision actually is. So I thought about some ways that I could come up with a vision test for you guys. Oh man, my wallet's pretty dry, Jesus. And this is what I came up with, which is something that's fairly easy. We all have probably a couple dollars in our wallet or under the couch cushion, and we're going to use this to determine how good your vision truly is. It's a very simple test, and what I want you to do is take a tape measure, and preferably a $5 bill, but I'm sure the text that we're going to be reading is all the same on them, and we're going to take a measurement. We are going to mark with this tape measure on this surface. Hopefully you have something that you can mark like a workbench and not something that you don't want a permanent marker on, but every 4 inches we are going to mark it all the way down. 20, and we'll do one at 24 too, why not? With your table or surface marked every 4 inches up to 24 inches, we are going to read, in the case of this build, the small print that says this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. And what you're going to do is put your dome over here on the edge, and you're going to move this starting at the middle far away from you until you hit the point where you can no longer clearly read that, and then you're going to bring it closer to your face until you can no longer read it. And we're going to put a start and an end mark to give you a range of vision that is the most clear. So it might be a little hard for you guys to see these marks. I'll put a big 7 there. You probably still can't see it, but it doesn't matter, because let's talk about what we have here. Since you have a tape measure just as I do, and you'll put your marks down, this will be completely relevant to you. I was able to clearly see that text from approximately 7 to 8 inches from my eyeball all the way up to 24 inches plus. The reason I use the scale up to 24 inches is while I have long arms and as far away as I can hold it, I can read it. So that means that my vision is going to be exceptionally good to read that small a text at 24 inches clearly. At some point, probably around 26, 27, I would no longer be able to read that. So my distance in this small test is good. Now in welding, how would you ever be welding something with a molten pool further away than your arm length? Okay, so within that range, I'm okay. However, I have discovered I have a problem with my vision that you also may have, and you might not realize that. And that is that my near vision is not what it used to be. Part of getting old means that your vision goes to shit. It's just part of life, right? Well, what I determined is about 7 to 8 inches away from my eyeball, I can no longer read that text. It becomes blurry. That presents a significant problem for me, because if I am tasked with welding something closer than 7 to 8 inches, I cannot clearly see the molten puddle or what's going on. Now, in my life as a welder and just in general work, it's very rare in the past that I've had to weld or do something that close, but as I'm getting older, I notice that up close, I simply can't focus on stuff. And this presents a pretty serious problem, because a lot of new welders often put their face stupidly close into the weld area, or maybe you're welding in a confined space or on something that requires your face to be close to what you're welding. And if you can't see clearly, your welds will suffer significantly. So based on my determination, if your test, if within 10 to 12 inches, you're not able to read this because it's blurry, you're going to need to do something about your vision. So let's talk about what that something is. So it goes without saying, I am not an optometrist, and that if your vision is questionable or you believe that there is some issue with your vision, and in this test that I gave you, you failed, meaning that at significant parts of it you could not see, that's a problem, and that's something you should talk with a optometrist about, because they have basically tests that are more complex than this to determine how bad your vision is and what correction that you need. But I get it, maybe you don't have insurance, or maybe you're afraid to go to the eye doctor, and that's fine. So there's solutions out there. If you cannot see beyond 12 to 16 inches and it just becomes blurry, odds are you can probably still weld. However, you probably shouldn't be driving without glasses. So that's something to keep in mind. And we at home can't do a whole lot to fix that, okay? Because unless you buy some like Amazon glasses that are some kind of prescription, and you know what, just again, go to an optometrist. Vision problems within that about 10 to 12 inch and closer range, if you can't read it, we at home as a welder can do something about that, and that is this right here. It's known as a cheater lens. What it is they come in a variety of, I think it's called a diopter, and it's a magnification lens. What it allows you to do is see details like this text closer to your face than you would otherwise normally be able to focus. And I myself, which is ridiculous as this is going to sound, recently found out that I need a cheater lens. Okay, I was just at an optometrist about 8 months ago, and I didn't have any near vision tests done. I only had a test done maybe from like 14 inches, which my vision's fine. I didn't really realize how bad my super near vision was because it wasn't a problem for me. And guess what? It got overlooked. Well, I was put in a position where I had to do a lot of welding up close to my face, and all day, like all I kept doing was getting frustrated because I couldn't see what I was doing. The molten pool that wasn't clear, like nothing worked. So I decided to go out and get a pack of these cheater lenses, and I'll put a link in the description, off of Amazon, of an assorted variety from 1 power all the way up to 3 power. And I basically took the dollar bill and brought it close to my face and made a determination of what lens was just enough power to give me clarity up close without making everything look jumbo farther away. Because if you have an overpowered version of this, it's going to make it very difficult to weld with if you have to do different distances and not just up close, because everything's going to look weird. And what I settled on was a 1.5 cheater lens. And to give an example, 7 inches away, I cannot read this at all. It's blurry. It's more blurry than at probably 30 inches. And I'll put this on my face, and I know you're just going to have to trust me. I can literally read that up to about 3 inches close to my face, which is more than close enough to do what I need to do for the welding. So what I'm getting at, guys, is that if you cannot read that, you need to invest in a set of cheater lenses for your welding hood. And I don't care how old you are, if you're 10 years old, 20 years old, or 80 years old, if you need one of these, you need one of these. And if you try and weld without it, you're not going to be able to see what you should see. And there's no shame in this. And no, I don't want to be one of them old timers with the cheater lens in the hood because it's uncool, right? Who cares? You know, you'll be a slick welder if you can actually see something, if you catch my drift. So again, if you failed this test, look at this for close near vision. All right, let's talk about a couple other things. So another possibility as to something that could be preventing you from seeing as good as you could be is backlight. And I've covered this in other videos, but it pertains to this video as well. Normal welding hoods like this Lincoln Viking are fairly wide, have a fairly big open area above your dome, and luckily, they're painted flat black, at least most of them. But if you have one that's fairly glossy in here, or even worse, maybe white, you can get a ton of reflection from backlight in your shop, or even worse, outdoors, that reflects off of all the surfaces in here and more or less makes the clarity of what you're looking at worse. And that's why there's a lot of ways and a lot of things you can do to prevent that. So the first one, if you have a white painted hood on the inside or super reflective, spray paint that sucker flat black. Now keep in mind, take your cartridge out of there when you do it, but that will actually drastically help. The second thing is you could look at getting a different hood with a smaller window, something like this pipeliner, and the reason is simple. When you have as big of a screen as this guy has, you have so much more surface area to reflect at any angle in there back to your eyes. When you reduce the size of the cartridge, there's actually, basically your dome blocks out a lot of the backlight, giving you better vision. That's what I've found. So when you get to like this pipeliner series, you can see how much smaller, and this is probably can't even see it, but how much smaller that is. Now this is a fairly reflective, but the way that this is shaped, most of the reflection from backlight doesn't go directly into your eyes, but even this could be painted flat black. When you get into hoods like this Pancake, which I did a whole video on this is purposely designed to function as a set of goggles. Basically, this is sanded down to fit your face, and then you wear it like a pair of goggles. And that's why you see pipeliners using these outdoors, because you can see the puddle like it's just you in a puddle. Backlight is completely irrelevant because it's a set of goggles. Now, this is not a practical hood for a lot of work you might be doing, and I definitely wouldn't want to be welding, like say exhaust on a car wearing that. You'll probably burn yourself if you're not careful. And sometimes, so this won't work, this might not really work, at least in its stock form, and that's where you do have options. One of the things I did on this pipeliner hood is I took a actual hood, aka what started welding hoods being called hoods, is this guy right here, and I more or less just clipped it on, but it pops right off. I did cut this shorter, but you can buy these on Amazon and it will go on any hood. It'll go on even this one. And what it does is it drapes over the top of your head. This was actually almost this long, so it had like another 10 inches. And this will block almost all backlight out to where you can weld and you don't have any interference from that. Now, I personally didn't need that extreme of backlight protection, so I just kind of have it set up where I loop it over itself, and it has a nice seal in here at the top of my head. Sparks don't get in there, and not only that, it stops the light coming down here, which I find tends to be the worst. The side light generally isn't that bad. It's the light that comes here and reflects right onto your eyes that's the most distracting. So that is also an option. Keep in mind though, going to something like this, your face will get hotter and you'll sweat. And if you're in the winter time, I guess, and you're outdoors, you can plan on your lens fogging up simply because all that super hot moisture-laden air from your breath is going to sit in there. So it's not really a cure-all for everything, but I'll tell you what, if you have issues with backlight, at least consider getting one of those. It's not a permanent install, so you can pull it off if you don't need it, but it probably, to be honest, it probably will improve your welds. So in conclusion, I hopefully covered enough ideas for you guys to at least see where your vision is, how bad it is, if it's even within a realm of what I would consider acceptable for welding. Because guess what? If it's not, you're going to have to do something about it, buddy. Because if you can't see it clearly, guess what? You're never going to get really that good at welding because you simply can't see what's going on. And obviously, TIG being that it produces very small welds that are difficult to see, your vision matters more with TIG, I would say, than MIG and stick. But even so, The clearer you can see, the better welds you can do, especially in hard to reach places. I'm telling you, anytime your vision sucks due to like an obstruction, I guarantee you're going to lay down some of the worst welds you've ever done. So imagine if your vision isn't up to snuff, how bad those will be, let alone like easier welds if you can't see what's going on. But yeah, there are a lot of tips, there's a lot of tricks, and I can't stress enough, and I didn't really touch on this too much, but the importance of practice. If you do not practice enough and your skills just start lacking, I don't care what hood, what backlight you don't have, and what cheater lens you have, you're going to have to put in effort and time into developing the skill of welding to be able to do it. And there's no gear out there that'll do that for you unless you hire a welder who has a skill. Then yes, that that would get it done to a high level of quality. But you yourself, with enough practice, can handle most welding jobs without much of a problem. So it's just, this is part of it. And I thought it was very important to cover it because of how many people have asked for tips regarding this, and how many people, when I've taught, that tell me they can't see anything. And this hopefully will get you to a determination of what the problem is. Either it's skills, equipment, or your eyeballs, one of those. So anyways, if you guys got any suggestions for any kind of tips to help out with vision, or something to help with backlight, anything, feel free to leave them, because people will read it and they'll pick up those as well. And I put a bunch of links in the description for some random stuff. They're not affiliate links. I'm not selling you anything. I don't care what you buy. Just, you know, it's worth it to at least see where your vision is, and go to the damn optometrist. I'm telling you, take care of your eyes. With that said, until next time.